Welcome to the Non-Sequitur Show. Continual watching beyond this point may result in terminal face palming and a complete loss of wokeness. You have been warned.
Welcome everyone. Hey, this is like one of the most I think interesting discussions I'm going to have for quite some time, because this is like a potpourri of just about everything that I have talked about on this channel, all in one show. I got to tell you, I'm thrilled to death to have this particular discussion, because I don't even know what this discussion is going to be about, because there's just so much to talk about. There's been so many things that I've been talking to Brent about, and I had to narrow it down, and I was like, okay, what are we going to talk about? And so for those of you who don't know, I have Brent Hatley with me today. He was the senior producer for the Howard Stern Show for about 6 years, give or take.
Yeah, 6 years. I was a senior producer at the Howard Stern Show and channels, and I was one of the on-air cast members as well.
Yeah, and I'll be forthright with you. I mean, Howard Stern has been around for a very long time. Well, very well-known personality. I kind of know him more through America's Got Talent. But I mean, I'm familiar with the show, but I was never a big listener. I really actually thought that the co-host was named Robin Givens.
Oh no, her name is Robin Quivers.
Yeah, Robin Quivers. She's funny.
Oh, she's amazing. She's an amazing broadcaster too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you know, it's a very, very, I guess you could say, niche show that Howard Stern has. Would you say?
It is, and it's evolved and changed. You know, I became a fan of his show in '91, which is a very different tone than it is today. Which, you know, we all grow and evolve in certain ways, which he has. But I became a fan when I was a Marine in Southern California, and I heard it, and it was like the angriest and most real show on the radio. This wasn't a guy doing like the zookeeper, "Hey everybody, how you doing?" voice, you know. And he was talking about himself in a real way and talking about what goes on in his life in a real way. And he was very angry, and that made for really good radio.
Yeah, he doesn't pull punches. And, you know, you got to respect the game. I mean, he knew how to, you know, get an audience, captivate the audience, and talk to the audience on their level, and just, you know, break every single norm that you would imagine, especially when it came to radio communication and things that you would imagine, that the FCC and the guidelines. He just shat on all of them and threw them out the window and said, "Hey, fuck you, I'm going to do it the way I want," right?
Yeah, and you had to respect that, because he really did put his audience first at that time. He put like the guy that's, you know, swinging a hammer in New York City, that's the construction guy. He put that guy first, the guy that's driving a truck, the guy, you know, he put the average person that's struggling every day to pay their bills first, and understood their struggle, because that's where he came from. And I think that was his appeal, versus a lot of people on the radio that were being fake and doing this like zookeeper nut hut type of radio. Yeah,
he was genuine. I definitely give him that. Like I said, an acquired taste, one of those things that I maybe haven't indulged listening to every so often. I tend to probably listen to Joe Rogan more nowadays, you know, but that's mostly because we have a lot of similar guests and similar topics that we talk about. Only he's way the hell up here. I'm like, you know, I'm not trying to compare myself to Joe Rogan, right? But, you know, we have a lot of similar topics, although he does them in a very, very long form format. I mean, he goes for a long time, dude.
And I love Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is a fantastic guy. I met him for the first time through the UFC, the show I was on called the Bubba the Love Sponge Show, when the UFC was really trying to get off the ground, would have us come out and broadcast live from their pay-per-view events. And, you know, Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg would stop by and do our show. And then when Joe Rogan was out on the road doing stand-up comedy, he would have to come by, do morning shows to promote his show, and he would come by Bubba's show, and he came by one time and sat with us for 2 hours and hung out with all of us for an hour afterwards, just, talking shit with us back and forth and about all kinds of topics. The guy is really, really bright. And then when I see people in the media calling him right wing, I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about, because it's definitely not Joe Rogan.
He is not right wing, and he's a very intelligent, articulate guy. I remember him from Fear Factor way back in the day. Right, that's kind of how he made his mark, just by people eating bugs and shit.
Yeah, like I said, I met him and heard of him first from the UFC, and he was doing Fear Factor and stand-up comedy. And once I started talking to him on the air and then off the air, and he started talking to me about deprivation tanks and DMT, and man, he was fascinating to talk to. He's still to this day one of the favorite interviews that I've ever done on any show.
Oh, he's into floating tanks, those deprivation tanks, because those I would love to try those. I've done something similar, and I've had those types of. I won't want to call them out of body experiences, because I believe they're internalized. But when you have a lucid dream, or what you feel disconnected to your body, I've had those experiences, and so that I know that they're very real feeling, especially when you're able to put yourself in that state, which is kind of one of the things we're going to get to here eventually. Before we want to talk about the thumbnail that I had, because I want to talk about the slap that was heard around the world. In the background there for your thing, you've got Kiss, you got Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley that I'm noticing.
Yeah.
Huge fans. You're a rocker. I know you're a rocker. And I respect that, because I'm a metal person too. I'm a huge Kiss fan. Even with Peter Criss, who wasn't the greatest drummer in the world.
He's one of the biggest dicks to ever live.
Yeah. You watch the Kiss.
The rest of the guys are super nice. Like Gene and Paul are super nice guys. Like Gene is a businessman and a very positive person.
What about Freely?
I had to spend a day with him one day at SiriusXM, because the guy that handles the talent was out for the show, so I had to handle Gene Simmons for the day, and he was super nice, super positive. But Paul Stanley is on a personal level like one of my heroes. Just the way he approaches life and art, and the way that he is about, hey, listen, I'm going to try everything and anything, and I'm going to do my best at it, and fuck anybody that doesn't like it. Like just the fact that Paul Stanley is always trying new things and new art, and the way he approaches life, and it is just.
They seem totally down to earth, both of them. Now I heard that Ace Frehley had some issues. He wasn't very popular with the band, and
he wasn't, but he's a nice guy. Like I've met Ace, 4 or 5 times, and Ace is just a goofball. Like he actually wanted to be a stand-up comedian.
He has to play for Chris. I think, because I think that I didn't think they were looking for another a guitar. Because I know they had Vinnie Vincent. I'm not a huge fan of Vinnie Vincent, no offense. I think when I think of Kiss, I think of Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons. They are the definitive iconography of the Kiss genre throughout from the very beginning, from the inception of Kiss. Plus, I love his voice. Paul Stanley has that really powerful ballad type voice, and Gene Simmons is good too. Don't get me wrong, but you can always tell the Kiss songs that Gene Simmons is singing as comprised of and written, as opposed to Paul Stanley's. They have a very different. They have a very different type of songwriting and style, and it balances really well together, and I think that's why
it does. Yeah. It does. Paul's like a lover boy, and Gene's a filthy sex guy.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of like when you listen to the lyrics. That's kind of how they are.
Well, he ended up marrying Shannon Tweed.
Shannon Tweed. Yeah. And his kids, Gene Simmons' kids, and I'm a huge fan of Black Sabbath and Ozzy as well.
Yes.
But if you look at
Ozzy,
but if you look at Gene Simmons' kids and how they behave and conduct themselves, and you look at Ozzy's kids and how they behave and conduct themselves, like it's very easy to see who the better parent is. And I'm not a parent; I'm just judging from how the kids conduct themselves. And Gene's kids are really, really bright and really, really good kids. Ozzy's kids are a little bit more bratty.
Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second at all. By the way, but I am a major Ozzy fan. Dio,
me too.
I love Dio too. When Dio even sang with Rainbow, absolutely. And when he sang with Elf. they had masterful voices. I mean, when you heard something from Dio in a power ballad, you were like, oh, dude, this dude can freaking sing. And Ozzy, just flawless, you know. And how he could still sing it, like, what, he's got to be like, what, pushing 80, 78 or something?
Yeah.
Something like
and he's got Parkinson's now, which is sad. But like
sad.
we saw Ozzy with Black Sabbath and Rival Sons at Madison Square Gardens on that End of the Road tour. It was amazing. I've been going to Ozzy shows since, I think my first one was in '85 with Ozzy and Queensryche. So
I'm envious because I never got to see Ozfest. I've never seen Queensryche, although I loved Jeff Tate.
I've seen them with Jeff Tate and with their new singer Todd LaTorre. I've seen them both. I saw Queensryche a bunch of times with Jeff Tate.
I was Queensryche fan back in the day.
Well, Operation Mindcrime. I think you'd have to say Operation Mindcrime is one of the best concept albums ever made. I mean,
absolutely.
You could put The Wall above that one, but then Operation Mindcrime is right there.
Yeah, I remember growing up with that. Now, I told you guys we're going to be all over the place because there's just so much to talk about. The first concert, a really major concert I ever went to was actually 1984. It was a Rush tour, Power Windows tour. And then I saw one band before that, and it's really, really an old band, and they were just a local band. Well, they were a big band at one time. They were playing local at one of the little dive bars. They had a group called Nazareth. Remember them?
Oh yeah, hair of the dog, right. Love Hurts, all that stuff. Yeah,
and I was thrilled to death. I'm like, oh my god, this group is freaking. I didn't know who the hell they were, by the way. I mean, I think I had heard maybe Love Hurts at the time, but they were fantastic in this little concert. But yeah, I never got a chance to really go see concerts as a kid. I wanted to go see Iron Maiden when they were doing Power Slave.
So I saw that tour, Iron Maiden and Twisted Sister. I saw that at the Lakeland Civic Center here in the Tampa Bay area. When we were in New York City, we saw Iron Maiden 6 times while we were there. So they're still, to this day, this last time we saw Iron Maiden, which was this Legacy of the Beast tour, was the best time I've ever seen them. I saw them in 2009. I saw them Final Frontier tour. I've seen them lots and lots of times. But this last Legacy of the Beast tour was the best one I've ever seen.
It was amazing. With them?
Oh my gosh, Bruce Dickinson's still singing. He runs all over the stage. He sounds great. He hits all the notes.
Oh, like Bret Michaels or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bruce Dickinson holds the notes too to make sure that you know that he's not lip syncing, that he's actually singing. So it's that Iron Maiden show is amazing. I've already got my tickets. They'll be here in October for another Legacy of the Beast tour in Tampa. So I've already got my tickets for October. I can't wait.
How about Ghost? Have you seen them?
I saw them open for Iron Maiden 3 times, and then the last time I saw Ghost, they did 90 minutes and then did a 15-minute intermission and 75 minutes. So they did 2 Ghost concerts, no opening band at Barclays Center in Brooklyn. It was incredible. Tobias, who is
Tobias Forge,
the leader, Tobias Forge, who's the leader of Ghost. He's so super incredibly talented. Plus they have a sense of humor with everything. They're fantastic.
I have gone on record to say that I think Ghost is probably one of, if not the most underrated band in history.
Yeah,
it's so underrated. The brilliancy of his music, his the way he composes that shit, absolutely freaking. And of course, they play up the whole satanic aspect. They're a satanic band. Well, not really, but but neither was Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath was a Christian band, actually. Supposedly. Well,
they weren't either. You know the story behind the crosses in Black Sabbath, right?
Yeah, it was what's his name? Tommy Iommi was really into that iconography.
No, so what happened? What happened was they're playing in England, and I've got a Black Sabbath book that Rob Flynn from Machine Head wrote the foreword for. So what happened is they are playing around England, and at this time you're talking about 1970. So there's like all these weird religious cults and things like that. And one of them wants Black Sabbath to come play at their religious ceremony, like quote unquote devil worshiping ceremony. So Ozzy's like, Ozzy still was fucking, even when he was young, was kind of out of it. I'm not even into that. So they start.
He can't speak with his ship, and he sings like a god.
I know. We're not even into that, anything like that. And so they start wearing crosses because Geezer Butler is like, these people said, well, okay, well, we're going to curse you since you're not going to come play at our deal. So they started wearing crosses to ward off the curse. So no, they were not any sort of a Christian band at all. they were kind of out of Birmingham, England. They all come from this really rough industrial neighborhood where Tony Iommi would go around kicking people's ass, like physically.
Yeah, he's badass.
Including Ozzy. He would bully Ozzy, and
still does probably.
Yeah, Tony Iommi was like the neighborhood fucking bully, and they come from this rough and tumble town in Birmingham, England, this part of it, and they were like the working man's band. Like, so when they come out, the Doc Martens and stuff that everybody wears now for fashion, where people wore those as working boots in England back then, and the working men would show up to see Ozzy and Black Sabbath because, like, hey, Ozzy's singing to me, War Pigs is for me. Like, yeah, the rich people go off to have their fucking cocktail and they send us to war.
Right.
Like, it was Ozzy and Black Sabbath was for that working class guy in England at that time.
Yeah, it spoke to them, most certainly. And then, of course, they had a lot of change in their lineups. I happen to like almost all their lead singers. I was a big fan of Jolene Turner from Rainbow.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Beautiful voice.
Amazing.
In fact, Rainbow was, again, I think another group that I think was extremely underrated. People,
Richie Blackmore.
Oh, Rainbow Rising, dude. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny too because people like have heard those songs and yet they don't recognize who sings them or where they came from. They just go, "Oh yeah, I've heard that song before," right? But you tell them it's Rainbow, they're like, "Who?"
Yeah, like Long Live Rock and Roll is a great record. It's I mean, Rainbow was in all of Richie Blackmore's projects really are really awesome. Deep Purple is great, Rainbow's great, and then he meets this woman that's this a radio person. Her name's Candace Knight. And when Deep Purple does this tour, they do this tour where they play soccer against the radio people all around the country as a promotion. And Richie Blackmore meets this radio person named Candace Knight, and they have a band now called Blackmore's Night. So if you can look them up on Spotify. And it's like a medieval sounding band doing like medieval sounding songs with her singing and Richie Blackmore playing guitar. But they even do some covers of the old like Dio Rainbow songs as well. And it's a really interesting sounding band. It just shows like Richie Blackmore's range as a musician, and how he can play. But that Blackmore's Night, if you want to listen to something different that Richie Blackmore did, but still is super talented, I can't recommend that enough.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I love listening to new stuff. Man, in fact, I remember the first time I heard the song because I didn't really know Ghost until it's been pretty recently. But the first time I heard like Year Zero, I was like, I'm in love. This is. I'm like, where's this song been all my life?
Yes, yeah, I saw them. Like I said, the first time I'd never seen them before, and I was going with my wife and another friend. We were going to see Iron Maiden, and he was like, "Hey, let's go. Let's get there early. Let's check out Ghost." So that day, I think I listened to Square Hammer, the song Square Hammer.
I love it.
I was like,
I love amazing. That song, dude. Square Hammer.
I was like,
I mean, and the video, and all their videos were freaking just so good.
Yeah. So, and then, Ghost, they open with that song Square Hammer. So I end up getting to see them open for Maiden 3 times. And then seeing them do their headlining tour when they were on Prequel it was incredible. That band is incredible.
The bar I go to, they play that song Dance Macabre, and they don't really even know the history of the group because I'm like, oh, that's Ghost. I'm like, who?
Do they know that he's singing about having sex and singing with dancing with a dead chick?
Yeah. They have no idea. No, I do. I watched the video. In fact, I hate to say it, but every time I watch that video, I just have to stop and pause on that 80s Asian dancer.
Yeah.
She's actually a pretty well-known dancer, I guess. But she nails that shit, man. She's awesome in that video. And he's. Chat real quick. David Dalla for $5 says off topic, which is fine because this is a non-sequitur show. We don't ever stay on the fucking topic. He says, Steve, you lost a ton of weight. Congrats. I lost 105 pounds after a divorce. Well, I don't know if the divorce, was the reason you lost the weight. I have lost weight. Yes, I have unfortunately put back a few pounds, but not much. But I have lost 20 pounds overall. That's significant. But thank you for that. I don't know how you can see from that angle, but whatever. Stand up straight. But thank you, Dave. Okay, so I want to get into this whole slap thing because I was talking to you earlier, and you say you have a different perspective on the whole slap thing. I want to know when it came to the Oscars. Obviously, there was an incident. I guess they called it a kerfluffle where Will Smith went up there and slapped Chris Rock for making a joke about his wife, Jenna Pinkett Smith, right?
Right. Yeah.
I have my personal views on it, but I want to hear yours first, and then I'll see if they're kind of congruent.
So mine are very nuanced. First of all, Chris Rock did nothing wrong. Chris Rock's a comedian. He's there to try to make something that's incredibly boring and terrible as a broadcast interesting. And he made a joke, which isn't, I mean, the joke is actually a compliment to Jada Pinkett Smith, because you're saying that you're comparing her to Demi Moore in G.I. Jane, and Demi Moore looked great in G.I. Jane. So Chris Rock, let me start by saying, didn't do anything wrong. The joke wasn't offensive, and it wasn't necessarily even that funny either. But nonetheless, it was kind of a compliment to her, saying like comparing her to a hot chick is not an insult. it's saying you look great.
I'm with you so far, man. We're on the same page so far.
And you're rocking it.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that so far. Okay.
So Chris Rock didn't do anything wrong. Will Smith is a guy who has endured quite a few years of people making fun of him for his sexuality. And he's a guy who obviously lost his cool, and there's no excuse whatsoever for going up there and hitting somebody and engaging in violence. And there's no excuse for it. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. But two wrongs don't make a right. So people that are criticizing Will Smith now are thinking that it's okay now to make fun of his sexuality. So I would just pose it to you this way. Let's say that Chris Rock was up there making a joke about a gay couple, and it was a gay guy that went up there and smacked him across the face for not being disrespectful, but the gay guy goes up there and smacks him across the face. And then everybody's criticism of the gay guy is about the guy being gay, not about what he did. And that's what's going on with Will Smith here, is now the criticism of him is about his sexuality, not about what he did. Now everybody's calling him a cuck and this and that and the other thing, and criticizing the fact that they're ethically non-monogamous, which is you're still making fun of somebody for their sexuality. You're not talking about the fact that the violence is the problem here. The initiating of violence to solve a problem, which it never does. It comes back to you and boomerangs back to you, maybe not immediately, but it's going to cause you more problems than it's going to solve. Yeah. And that's what's going on here. But I think that people are way out of line in using his sexuality to criticize him, because again, if it was a gay person, you wouldn't be able to use the F word for gay people if a gay person does something that's wrong. In fact, Caitlyn Jenner ran somebody over with a car, and you can't criticize Caitlyn Jenner at all, even though that was wrong, because you're being quote unquote anti-trans if you criticize Caitlyn Jenner for hitting somebody with a car.
Yeah, I don't think we're too far off here. I don't think we're too far off from each other on my perspective as well. I do agree with you. Will Smith should not be criticized for anything related to sexuality. I don't have a fuck all issue with anything of that. I think the problem is, though, this is a formal event. This is the Academy. This is the Oscars. And I think that both you and I agree. Him getting up on stage, problematic to begin with. Him assaulting somebody, even more so. And right. Again, I don't think that's something that she even wanted him to do, but I noticed she didn't try to even stop him. And because I think it's a very unidirectional arrangement there, that I really believe he really loves his wife and he really cares about her and stuff like that, but it doesn't seem to be, there's no reciprocity there like there should be, because I don't think she should have let him get up and do that, because he tanked himself for no particular reason other than I think that, he felt hurt, he felt slighted, and there's no justification for that. But for as far as like the reasonings that he felt on that, yeah, I get it, and I feel for the guy. But to me, as you said, Chris Rock did nothing wrong. He's a fucking comedian. He's going to say things that are going to cross the lines, and even this did not cross the lines. This to me was not out of bounds. That's tame for Chris Rock.
Yes, yeah, and again, it's a kind of a compliment. Like you're not comparing Jada Pinkett Smith to somebody that's not attractive. You're comparing her to somebody like Demi Moore. Back when G.I. Jane came out, I was on a radio show and we were lucky enough to get a 5-minute call around from Demi Moore while she was promoting it. But one of the things she told us was like how she worked out to look good for that movie.
She was in good shape.
Yeah, and she looked great in that movie. And you're saying, hey, Jada, you're looking great. You're rocking it in kind of a funny form. Not offensive at all. Like I said, it's a compliment to Jada Pinkett Smith because she looked great. I think Will Smith lost his cool over, and I don't think he thought about what was really said. And I watched a clip last night. I'm on a show called Miserable Men with other comedians, and I'm the only one that's not miserable, that's been married, that's married, but it's a fun show to do. And they played the clip. There's an old clip of her and her mother and him talking about the day that they got married, and she felt like she was forced to get married because she didn't want to get married. She is a person who I believe is very unhappy with marriage, being told what to do. With, I'm a libertarian and a libertine. I have a really hard time with authority. I'm
registering this year as a libertarian, by the way.
Yeah. I'm a libertarian and a libertine, and I do not like being told what to do, and I do not like being forced into things that to do something. And she felt like, and she says very honestly in front of her mother and her kid and Will Smith, like she didn't want to get married. And she doesn't enjoy the institution of marriage, and it's not for everybody. Like a lot of people feel, and I've felt this way in my in other lifetimes and other relationships. It makes some people feel very trapped, and it makes some people feel very depressed to be married. So they're ethically non-monogamous, so she can have her freedom and she can do her thing. But I still think that she's just somebody that's not into being quote unquote tied down, which is okay. Which is okay. That's perfectly fine. She should be allowed to be a free human being. She gets a lot of family pressure. You can see that her mother is on this show. She gets, pressure from her Will Smith, and now she's got 2 kids. And I think she feels, she looks like a person. The look on her face looks like that she is hurting, and she is somebody that wants to be a free person to do what she wants to do when she wants to do it, and she doesn't want to be tied down to this institution of marriage or society or any of this other stuff. It doesn't interest her.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong
unhappy.
on that. I think you're absolutely right. And that's the problem, though. When 2 people have a relationship like that, they have to kind of be on the same page. I've never been married myself.
Yeah.
I've had opportunities. The last person that I fell in love with, I kind of was thinking that I would be, but it didn't work out, obviously. I'm still single, but I'm not against marriage. I just never found the person that I wanted to get married to, even though, like I said, I have a child. My daughter's turning 17 here soon. I get along fantastic with her mom. We lived together for 5 years. And which it wasn't a marriage, but I mean, we shared everything, banking, everything. I mean, for 5 years, I mean, when you live with somebody and you share everything, it's basically a marriage without a piece of paper, right? So
in some states, you're getting close to a common law marriage.
Yeah, 2 more years, I think it would have been in Utah, but I was in California. Yeah. Although I did live with somebody for 5 years in Utah as well. I think she was going for that common law too, because I shit you not, this woman was like, "Hey, either marry me or I'm going to go marry somebody else," and I'm like.
Well, bye.
I was like, it doesn't work that way. I was done. I was like, I'm not going to play that. And so,
and in some states, they can make you pay this thing called palimony.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's weird, right?
It's crazy.
I don't get any of that shit. I mean, I think even alimony is kind of antiquated, but I mean, palimony, I live with my roommate here. She can pay me palimony. We're pals. She's also my mod, although she's passed out. My mod is passed out on the couch over here. It's okay. She's had a long night. She was out at Palm Springs and she was partying it up, and so.
Oh, hey, that sounds amazing. Except for the Palm Springs part. I'm not a big fan of the desert.
I'm not either, and I live there. I do like Indio. I like where I'm at, but Palm Springs, not so much the area. But it's hot as shit in this area.
Oh yeah, well, I was stationed when I was in the Marine Corps. I was stationed at Marine Corps Air Station Tustin, California, which is in Irvine.
Absolutely,
it's closed now. It's closed now, and every now and then people had to go to 29 Palms, which was just
that's up in Joshua Tree, yeah.
Yeah, it's the worst. It's the worst base you want to go to in the Marine Corps. It's the worst duty station in the United States for the Marine Corps. It's terrible.
Semper Fi. What'd you get out as? What rank?
I was a corporal. I was in for 4 years, and I was selected for sergeant. And they said, if you resign, you get to go be a drill instructor at Parris Island. And I said, well, no thanks.
Yeah, I did. I did my 6 years Navy.
Oh, awesome!
But I got out as an E6, believe it or not, though. But no re-up. My re-enlistment bonus was $30,000. Now it's $125,000, and they still can't find people that are willing to re-up because people, one, it sucks. I mean, 6 years is a long fucking time. Even 4 years is a long time, because usually you have 4 years active and then 4 years inactive, because most things are 8 years total.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah. And they give you this incentivized thing. Now they're offering people $25,000 to join the Navy if you ship out by like June 30th or something like that. They're really having difficulty time finding people, and especially the rate I was in, which was the nuclear Navy. They can't find qualified people because they spend about $250,000 to train you. They give you all this education, and what happens after people get an education and they've been in for 6 years? They're like, wait a minute, I can either get this money and stay in the military, or you can make that money in the private sector and not have to do the same bullshit.
Right. Yeah. I worked in naval aviation, so I worked in a CH-53E squadron, and I decided to go to school at night and then work at a college radio station at night. I start listening to Howard Stern, and I'm like, wow, like I can, because what I really wanted to do was I really wanted to argue Fourth Amendment cases on appeal. I didn't want to do it at the trial level. I wanted to do appellate law of the right to search and seizure cases is what I really, really wanted to do. But I figured that I can do a lot better and get my stuff out a lot more on the radio. And all the time I was growing up, I used to go announce the Little League football games. I used to do like a radio show in my room. It was in my head. And then once I heard Howard, I was like, oh yes, boom, inspiration. And I switched to broadcast communications. And then when I got out, I moved here to Tampa, and I got a job at 98 Rock, which is like, back then it was the coolest radio station ever. And the rest is history. I met up with this guy, started doing mornings there, named Bubba the Love Sponge.
Oh, God, what a name. Bubba the Love Sponge.
Bubba the Love Sponge.
That sounds a kink to it, actually.
Yeah, well, you have no idea. Like, go Google Hulk Hogan sex tape. And
I'm familiar with that. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah,
so that was Bubba's ex-wife. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was Bubba's ex-wife in that tape. Believe me, there's a whole story there. But I start doing this show with Bubba the Love Sponge, and we do a show that is just out of control. I mean, way out of control, to the point where in 2004, when George W. Bush and Karl Rove decide that gay marriage and cracking down on bad words on the radio is going to be their election year thing, we were one of the people. We got the largest one-time FCC fine in the history of the FCC at that point. We got a $750,000 fine one-time fine. And so Howard hired us. Like, that was a really kind thing for him to do, because we were done in radio. Like, there was people in broadcast radio today, they're more scared for their jobs than ever, but that scared people for their jobs. And they were like, no way are we touching these guys.
Yeah, so it's like toxic when you cost, that amount of money. Yeah, of course.
That amount of money. And the government threatened to Clear Channel with pulling the license of all their stations in the state of Florida. I mean, that is a ton of money for that company. They're like, okay, we'll fire Bubba, we'll fire Howard, we'll take them all off of our channels. Well, Howard gets this deal at Sirius XM and puts us on in afternoons and tells us, personally, privately, like, you guys didn't do anything wrong. These general managers and salespeople are cashing their bonus checks because you guys are number one. But when it comes time for somebody to get in trouble, it was all these guys. Bye. You guys are fired. So Howard put us on and revived our career, which was an amazing thing for him to do, really, when you think about it. So then we get to Sirius XM, and Howard really listens to our show for a couple of days. And Gary comes down and says, Howard, why don't you come in tomorrow morning? So we come in the next day. He was like, if people say that we're the Beatles of radio, you guys are Marilyn Manson. Like, that's the kind of show that we did. We did a crazy, out of control show. And Tampa Bay is, I don't know if you're familiar with this town, but Tampa Bay is a pirate town. That's the mentality here. It's strip clubs and partying 24/7. And our show was that. It was like, people like, what was it like being on Bubba's show? It was like, that was like being in Motley Crue for 13 years. And people were like, well, what was it like working for Howard? I was like, well, that's corporate America and Rockefeller Center in Manhattan. Like,
yeah, much more upscale.
You are in corporate America, the center of corporate America, when you're working at Sirius XM. Like Bubba's show, we had our own building that was separate from the radio station so we could do crazy shit. And it was just a different thing altogether. It was like being in Marilyn Manson versus being in like the Rolling Stones. It was two completely different things.
Do you think that Sirius XM took off because of the limitations on radios? Because I grew up listening to like KFI, Dr. Demento, Art Bell, even out at like Pro Up New York.
My God, I got to meet Dr.
You have to meet Dr.
Demento at SiriusXM. He came in and did the wrap-up show one time for the Stern Show. Great guy. I was so excited to meet Dr. Demento.
That was it back then. I mean, I remember. I don't know if you ever got into ham radio, but I got my radio communication license when I was 13, KB6 HSZ. I still remember my number, and I remember building my first, crystal radio. Right. And I was like I said, I was like 12 or 13 at the time. I think I got my license when I was 13, but I had built this crystal radio, had no power supply. Right. And I'm thinking this is magic. Right. Because I'm learning about electronics and I'm listening to the KFI, which is a very powerful radio station. I don't remember how many watts they were.
But they worked for KFI.
Yeah, they were powerful. I mean, you could listen to them for quite some distance. And so,
because it's an AM signal, so especially at night. At night you get an AM bounce into the atmosphere. It'll go over, like they can go like a third of the country.
Oh, absolutely, it's ionized propagation, and you can get some tropospheric ducting, and you can get some really good bounce. But I mean, I thought it was magic. I was like, how am I listening to this radio station with no power supply with an earpiece? But I would lay awake listening to that, and then my dad bought me this little portable black and white TV, and I ended up watching what was the name of the show? It was Rush Limbaugh's original show on when he first went to TV. He
was on broadcast TV. Like I lived in Southern California back then, so I would listen to Howard in the morning back then, and I would listen to KFI in the afternoon and at night. I'd listen to John and Ken on KFI. I ended up in 2013 and 2014. I was working at KFI. I was doing weekends on KFI with a woman named Lisa Ann Walter, and it was amazing. I was like, I got to work at KFI. Like, amazing.
KFI was the big shit down here. Yeah.
And they were a really, really good radio station. And Bill Handel, I would listen to him because he's this lawyer that's on KFI, and then also sometimes at night on KLOS they would have the Grease Man would be on KLOS, so I would listen to the Grease Man.
Was that 95.5?
I would listen to the Grease Man sometimes at night.
Was it? I'm trying to remember. I don't even remember the frequencies. I think it was 95.5 KLOS, wasn't it?
Yeah, KLOS 95.5. Gino Michelini. They had the Grease Man. They had Mark and Brian with their morning show.
Mark and Brian in the morning. Yeah, Mark and Brian in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just a terrible show. Like the LA shows, the two LA shows that I thought were good, of course, was Howard that got syndicated out of New York, and then Kevin and Bean, who were on KROQ, the world famous KROQ, K-Rock. Kevin and Bean, but they were good. And then there was a heavy metal station in Long Beach called KNAC that was just
I remember KNAC came out. I remember when KNAC came out. Yeah,
KNAC was fantastic.
If I'm not mistaken, they're playing Metallica.
Yeah, yep. Slayer, Motorhead. It was amazing.
Like the bomb, because we had rock back then, right? And in the 80s, I really wasn't into the 80s music. I wasn't a fan of Depeche Mode, wasn't a fan of REM, wasn't a fan of those types of genres. But Metallica and Testament and Slayer and all of a sudden you had KNAC come up, and all of a sudden you had, oh my God, this is a metal station. This is not just rock. This is not playing Led Zeppelin. This is playing freaking metal.
Yeah.
I remember
I would be listening, like they had like a show like called Heavy Lunch, where they would like really like the heaviest shit that they could at lunchtime. I was like, this is so awesome. I'm hearing like Seasons in the Abyss by Slayer at lunch. This is great.
Rain and Blood, South of Heaven or whatever. Somebody had asked in the live chat, not forgetting Morton Downey Jr. Oh no, I'm not forgetting Morton Downey Jr. The Mouth. I actually remember watching Morton Downey Jr. show, and matter of fact, that's one of the first shows I watched where I was like, this is like sensationalized, but I'm fascinated by it, because I don't watch reality TV very much. I don't watch any of these fucking shows like 16 and Pregnant or Teen Mom or Housewives of whatever fucking city. Not interested in any of it. But when it came to some of these reality TV, things like Donahue and Morton Downey Jr., or Wally George and things of that nature, I was like,
well, Wally George, that's right. His daughter is Rebecca De Mornay.
Rebecca De Mornay, yes. Oh yeah, I'm well aware. Yes, it's just one of the most
those shows were great and crazy.
Ever was Rebecca De
Mornay, yes. And he used to get pissed when people would bring up that was his daughter too.
No, I remember that.
Yeah, those were great shows, and they had an edge to them. There was an edge to it. Like as much as I dislike Geraldo, his show even had a bit of an edge to it, to the point where you would have black people up there with the Ku Klux Klan, and then all of a sudden,
they wanted that, right? Remember when he broke when he got his nose broken?
Yeah, like
they
yes,
wanted that to happen.
They wanted that.
Yeah, of course they did.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Geraldo went to shit when I remember they had promoted the Al Capone's vault.
Right.
And this was supposed to be a big event. Oh, we've got Al Capone's vault. We're going to find millions. We're going to find Jimmy Hoffa's body kind of shit. Right? And it was so demoralizing when they finally opened it and found Bump Kiss. And so I think that they took a hit for that. And of course, getting his nose broken on live. Was it live? I think it was live. Was it live when he got his nose broken?
Yes.
I think it was live back then.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, live TV is a lot different than people don't understand. With live TV, it's a whole different ballgame. Even Saturday Night Live, who still is one of the very few shows that do live broadcasting, it is so just boom, 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 boom. You don't deviate from Lorne Michaels layouts in his script and all this
right.
stuff. Yeah, he doesn't like even though when it comes to Saturday Night Live, the funniest skits are the ones where they lose their shit, right? When they start corpsing and they start busting up
absolutely.
Laughing. But he hates that. I guess I don't know why Lorne Michaels doesn't really like that, but the audience, it's fucking hilarious.
It's all comedy style. Like I was in people in comedy get very upset with me about this, but I am not. I mean, it's one of those opinions I have that's like the Beatles opinion. Like I was never not a fan of Saturday Night Live. It's just not my brand of what I think is funny.
Not even with Belushi or any of those guys. Murray.
I was young back then, and I found it mildly funny.
Sound like I thought she was the one that really kind of made me laugh.
Like I have a really dark sense of humor. So like the church lady and stuff like that doesn't do much for me. Like
Satan?
My favorite comedy show of all time, still to this day as we sit here, is South Park.
Oh,
South Park is my sense of humor.
Trey
like
Parker.
That is.
Oh yeah, they're brilliant.
That's what I find funny. Like their Broadway show, Book of Mormon, is all kinds of fucking brilliant. Yeah, it is just their humor to me is what I find hilarious. Like I tell people sometimes there's parts of Braveheart that I find fucking funny. Like it's just. I have a very dark sense of humor, and kind of the slapstickish nut hut stuff doesn't appeal to me.
Would you think
it's very, very hard?
Do you think that South Park kind of has gone again? I've seen every episode of South Park, I think. And I think over whatever I don't know, 24 seasons has been or something or whatever it is. I think they've lost it a little bit because the original ones were a hell of a lot more funny. Big Al's gay boat ride.
That's hilarious.
Your dog is gay or homosexual. No, he's not. Just confused. I mean, just one of the funniest fucking lines ever. No, he's not. He's just confused,
I like all of them, and still to this day because of the layering of it. It's their jokes have multiple layers, and they make fun of everybody. Like they're not on the left, they're not on the right. They make fun of everybody, and that's what I love. And I still to this day, like I think even the episodes they're putting out now are just they're just fantastic. It's
definitely one of the most creatively funny shows. The two other shows I'd probably put up there, I really thought Seinfeld was hilarious.
Amazing show. Like anything that Larry David does, I'm in for watching. Anything that Larry David does.
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
See, that's one that I just don't get.
Oh my God, really?
I just don't get it. Like that's one I don't get.
It's really,
yeah. I do love Seinfeld. I'm with you. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm. There's a show. That's probably a lot of people don't know, but it's on HBO Max right now. You can watch it stream it on HBO Max. It's a show about a metal band. It's called Metalocalypse. It's about a fake metal band called Death Clock. And if you like heavy metal,
I know Death Clock.
Yeah.
Wait, Death Clock's fake? Death Clock had their own cartoon. I thought they were actually a real band.
No. It's a show called Metalocalypse is the name of the show, and the band is Death Clock. They're not a real band.
I thought they actually played. I mean,
no, they are playing. So it's a guy named Brendan Small and another guy. They do play actual music, but it's not an actual band. They're like cartoon. It's a cartoon.
It's a cartoon. Yeah.
And Brendan is a fantastic writer, and the comedy that's in there is very funny, but you do have to understand heavy metal and heavy metal culture to get the jokes. So Metalocalypse isn't for everybody, but if you're a heavy metaler, it's a must.
Somebody they said Art Bell sounds very familiar. Really? Just familiar
Oh my
out there?
God,
Really? He was like one of the biggest names.
He's one of my top 5. If you talk about top 5 radio people, just radio people of all time,
Art Bell, absolutely.
Art Bell is absolutely in my top 5.
I mean, I listen to George Norrie as well, but nowhere
he's not even the same conversation as Art Bell.
Yep. Art Bell is fascinating.
He was the Vincent Price of radio.
Yep.
I mean, the delivery, the pauses, the way he pondered thoughts, the way that he communicated, the way he talked to guests, the way he handled callers, and the way he handled their topics it was fantastic. And I used to listen to his show on Sunday nights too, Dreamland.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, Art Bell was a fantastic radio broadcaster. Like just one of the best ever. I'd put Orson Welles and Art Bell and Howard Stern are in a different level for me. Classic Howard Stern are in a different level for me than everybody else.
Do you think that's because of like you and I are similar of age? I have a feeling. Do you think that's just because maybe the younger generation didn't grow up with those types of things? They didn't grow up listening to Dreamland. I think it was on Sunday nights or Saturday nights.
Sunday nights, yeah. So Sunday nights, because I would have a morning show to do on the next day. So Sunday nights, that's what I would put on at night in the dark, and I would listen to Art Bell and Dreamland. It was awesome.
On, and he would have like Major Ed Dames come on and talk about remote viewing. Right.
And we have Whitley Strieber come on. Like, it's just all the stuff that he did was just fantastic, and it was taking your mind to a place that it doesn't normally go, and that's what I loved about Art. It was just a fantastic show, and he was a great broadcaster.
That's actually a brilliant segue to another topic I want to talk to you about taking your mind into altered other places. Know what I'm referring to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
All right. So I just recently I had a friend of mine, Erin, come on, and she is somebody who indulges in shrooms. So she takes psychopsilocybin, and I don't think she even microdoses. I think she full on does full on trips. Now, people know that I haven't tried them. I do have some. I have about 2 grams of I think it's called Golden Teacher or something like that I have not tried. Friend sent them to me, but I'll tell you straight out. I'm one of those people that has a very low tolerance to this stuff. I take a 5 milligram gummy and I'm good for the night. 10 milligrams and don't talk to me for 12 hours. I mean,
so I'm very sensitive. I'm very sensitive to psychedelics as well. Okay.
So you have a low. Okay, so you have a pretty low tolerance when it comes to these psychedelics.
A low threshold. So
I don't feel so bad now because I got a low threshold for this shit.
So what you want to do is you want to start with half a gram.
And that's what I was told too, half a gram or even a quarter. But the problem is there's no way to really do a titration or to measure certain things when you have different types of shrooms like that. So it's a little bit different than taking 500 milligrams of acetaminophen. You know what you're getting. When it comes to shrooms, it's a guessing game. And
it is.
And I just want to try microdosing to get this. I don't want a euphoric type thing. I don't want to trip. I've had hallucinations only because of what's called hypnagogic hallucinations from sleep deprivations.
Right.
It's not pleasant, but I mean, I know what it's like to hallucinate. But I just want to
this is not that
micro.
So this is not that at all. So what you want to do is you want to start with a half a gram, and you want to do that amount for quite a long time. And I'm advocating this as a political position. Psilocybin should be legal. There's no reason that it shouldn't be legal.
Yes. There's
no reason for it to be illegal. So you do not want to start with higher doses. You want to start with a very low microdose. And a few of the things that it does. So I've been getting to higher and higher doses, and when you do it over a long period of time. So here's some of the things, and there's been tons of research done. And here's some of the things that it does after you take it for long periods of time. First of all, is it gives you positive changes in your personality. You have some higher altruism for society. It mitigates authoritarian views. So your authoritarian views in wanting to tell other people what to do comes way down.
So you're saying Trump should have OD'd on this stuff then?
Yeah. I don't know if it would fix a personality disorder.
I don't think it will fix that shit.
It decrease it, and this is anecdotally true for me. It decreases your violent behavior. So I'm someone that was raised in the South, Scots Irish, and our
me
people
too.
are very.
Yeah, Scots
Our
Irish.
people in the South, Scots Irish people are in the South. If like talking about the deep South, are very tribal, score settling type people, and that's the way I was raised. And then you throw me into the Marine Corps, which teaches you to be a killer, and then so you have reinforced in your mind from the time of you're a child, and then now when I was a young adult, that violence solves things. When actually the opposite is true. When you do violent things, violence comes back to you. It's almost like that finger trap. The more that you do it, the more that you're caught in this circle of negativity and violence. And what psilocybin does is it breaks that. And it did it for me. It broke me of that thought that any type of violence is going to solve any of my problems. That thought is completely out of my head. And now I realize how stupid it is to even think that doing something violent to another human being is going to solve a problem. Even if that person deserves it, it doesn't even matter if you're right or wrong when you're committing that violence. Now, not to say that I won't defend myself if I have to, I will, but I'm not looking to get into a physical confrontation, whereas before I was looking to get into a physical confrontation.
Yeah, I'm not a violent person, so I don't have to worry about it. Now I boxed a little bit. In the Navy, I did boxing. I got a boxer's break actually. My knuckle. This is a very standard break called a boxer's break. But I didn't get that. I didn't get breaking on a fight. I broke it. I rebroke it on a fight, but I broke it actually punching a solid oak desk. And I got to tell you, oak does not give.
No, it does not.
Not recommended.
So also what it does is it removes your ego. And that's something that I really needed personally done. It removed my ego. And all of us can be full of ourselves. Like narcissistic personality disorder, as in the DSM-5, is one thing. That is a actual medical diagnosis. It's fixable, all that stuff. I call it, a lot of us are full of ourselves. I was full of myself. I needed that removed. The psilocybin actually removed that ego from me, which I really needed. And it allowed me to look at things in a more honest and real way. It also increases your openness with the people that are meaningful to you. And it increases your personal well-being. Now, physically, what it does is it reconnects as you get to, like, I'm 50. So we all have these neurons in our brain, and they start to wear and disconnect after a while. And psilocybin will reconnect those neurons in your brain. So right now, my brain is working better than it has in a long time.
I've read that. I've read that it actually started rewiring connections again. Yeah, it
does. And it also, oddly enough, has reduced my desire to drink alcohol at all. It's really like I've gone out now and I've tried. I was like, okay, I'm drinking beer tonight. Like I haven't in a while. And I'll choke down one beer. And by the second one, I'm like, I'm done.
I'm
done.
I'm not a big drinker. I do go to a bar frequently that I've been going to for a long time. But I mean, I'll have like a Modelo. I'll have like a Bud Light or a Michelob Ultra, very low cal. But the one time I decided to actually get drunk because it was my birthday on February 14th, because I hadn't been drunk in ages. I ended up like eating shit, and I fell down and just busted my head open. And I was like, "Oh fuck this shit." This is one of the reasons I realized, because I had gone to the bar and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's my birthday," so they bought me some wine. I had some wine there, and then I went to the other bar and had some beer, and then all of a sudden my friends bought me a double shot of Jack Daniels. And I realized why I don't drink Jack Daniels any longer. Because in the Navy, that's what's my drink of choice, was drink Jack Daniels. Can't do that nowadays. And yeah, I come home and my roommate's like, "Are you okay? Are you dead? What happened? Did you get mugged?" And I'm like, "I just want to go to bed." I woke up, didn't remember fuck all. I go to the mirror and I'm like, "What the hell happened?" I had this big old massive like scrape, like road rash down my face. And so I was like, gosh, yeah, I was like, I'm not a big drinker fan, so I don't think psilocybin would be like something I need for that. But you think that 1 gram would be sufficient to get a decent enough microdose where you're not like full on tripping? But my question is that, because I've had different people tell me different things. Some people say actually eat like a small cap and then like a stem, which is about or make it to a tea. Now I make teas. I like my teas. What I'll do is I'll take cinnamon bark, the actual Mexican cinnamon bark, the actual real cinnamon, not this fake stuff. But I'll make cinnamon and I'll put it in water, and I'll put some cilantro in there and some kale. And then I might put a tea bag in there, like black tea or chamomile, and I'll let it seep and kind of distill it down. and put some sweetener in it. And it's one of the best teas out there. I mean, it's so good. And I
So
can do
some
that
people grind
with
up their some people grind up their mushrooms into a powder and make that part of the tea.
Mm-hmm. Is it more effective or less effective?
I don't know. Like I personally just straight up eat them like it's, you know, and choke it down.
Hey, I heard they're kind of bitter. Yeah, I mean,
it's tough to get down sometimes.
Yeah,
but
I would have to.
I get through it. And but I would say not even 1 gram. I'd say a half a gram. Start with a half, like measure it, take one of those small scales and just measure a half a gram. Like
yeah, I got some Coke dealers around the corner. I'll see if they can hook me up with a scale. Yeah, so a half a gram. So, you know, I've got supposedly I got sent 2 grams, so it'd be a quarter of that, obviously.
Yeah,
I could kind of visualize that if I know exactly what I've got sent with 2 grams, that I could figure out how to make a quarter.
Yeah, about a quarter of that. Take a half a gram, and then you're not going to hallucinate at all. But what it is going to do is going to start bringing thoughts to the surface. So first of all, any internal issues that you have, psilocybin brings them to the forefront and is like, deal with this now. The other thing that it does is you're wasting, like the plant almost tells you in your mind, you're wasting a whole lot of time and energy on this. It's stupid. And you're like, oh yeah, this is ridiculous. Why am I wasting my time on this?
I have an audience that does me that tells me that same thing. They tell me, hey, don't bother with this, bother with that. Real quick, Dave Dollar for another $5 says, Steve, buy some more gummies or I'll call the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Yes, we'll get more gummies.
Gummies are great too. I mean, I'm a big proponent of THC as well. Like the things that grow out of the ground, absolutely. And but
I don't take that much of it. It's very small amounts.
And some people are very THC is something I have a high tolerance for. But like when you start talking about psychedelics like psilocybin, I have a very low tolerance for that. It doesn't take very much. So if I take as much as 2.5 grams,
that's a full-on trip.
Yes. But the thoughts that come to you are incredible.
Well, I mean, THC can do that as well a little bit because I had so. But
psilocybin, it's a different pathway that it opens up in your mind. It's because believe me, it opens up doors in your mind that you don't even realize are there. Like there's gold in your head, and that is the key to that golden door. So there's a few projects that I'm working on, and half of them, half of the creative and writing came to me and my wife on psilocybin, and we write the notes down on that, and it sticks. Sometimes with THC, like with weed, you have to really write good notes or you'll forget.
Yeah,
it doesn't
THC
do that.
Be like, oh, this is a great thought, and then in the morning, like, what the hell was I thinking?
What was I thinking about? Psilocybin, it sticks. It sticks, and it almost imprints itself onto your subconscious. It sticks so well.
Do you really think it makes people more creative? Because a lot of people that have tried psilocybin and other types of hallucinogens, things like that, they seem to be, again, a lot more creative artistically when it comes to the arts, crafts, musics. People have written songs, literally.
Yes. Yes.
And they claim, some of them claim that they've gotten from other places, like they didn't write the song, it's because it kind of just came to them.
Yes. So yes, I think absolutely that's true. And I think you have to be a creative person to begin with, and it will enhance your creativity. I think if you're not creative, it will not make you a creative person. But I think if you're a creative person to begin with, absolutely it'll help. But so when you talk about there's another psychedelic called ayahuasca, which DMT is part of. So the people in Peru tell you that originally it was the plants that imparted, because there's 3 different parts to making ayahuasca, and they tell you that the plants sang them a song and told them how to make the ayahuasca brew. So I was like, okay, well, this sounds like kind of religion hokey bullshit. So then an article comes out this week in The Guardian that mushrooms, the fungi, actually talk to each other.
Yeah, I read that. It has 50 words.
50 words that they can compare to almost human language.
And The Guardian is a pretty reputable paper.
Yeah. Well, and when you read the study, it was the first one done. So the other, the peer review scientists are saying, well, I need to see this and I need to see that, which is great. I'm all for that. Let's do it. Let's start looking at all of this. But I think there's a deeper connection to some of these plants,
slime
like mushrooms, than people realize. And I think that there's something that psilocybin does for your brain. Obviously, one of the things that ayahuasca does for you, if anybody that doesn't know, is it pulls your past trauma out of you. in amazing ways. Every single person has a different experience on ayahuasca, so nobody can really tell you what your experience is going to be like on ayahuasca because they haven't lived your life. So it's psychedelics and our relationship with plants, like mushrooms and the DMT and THC, I think are very important. And I think also the last thing that religion, corporations, and government want you doing is psychedelics, because psychedelics, like I said, remove your ego, and they remove the importance on things. Like you start to think, all of these possessions, they're not my fucking possessions. When I'm in the ground, it's not going to matter anyway. Like, what does any of it matter? Like these things don't belong to me. Like, no, my wife doesn't belong to me. Nothing belongs to me. Like, I am here and present, and that's all I'm guaranteed. I'm not guaranteed the next moment in life. So none of this really matters all that much. And then when you really, then it gets you to really start thinking about things on a cosmic scale. So a friend of mine who's a guy that's in the swingers lifestyle, I got him to start, microdosing mushrooms and stepping up. And then we get to one night, we're at this place called Secrets out back and in the woods out back, and we're looking at the stars and we're talking about how big the universe is. And then it dawns on him, oh shit, like the universe is billions of years old. None of this matters. We're here maybe, if we're lucky, 90 years. I was like, it's
drop of the bucket.
It's a spark of energy and time. That's all it is. So all you can do is really enjoy every moment that you have. And try to enjoy every moment that you have, because that's all you have. I tell people one day the United States isn't going to exist. All of this stuff around us, all these big concrete buildings and cities and all this stuff, 1,000 years. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. 1,000 years after humans are gone, nobody will know we were here. The dinosaurs were on Earth longer than they've been extinct, and they've been extinct for 65 million years. Like, when you start thinking in terms of hundreds of millions and billions of years, you start to realize how really insignificant all of us are. I don't care if you're the president of the fucking United States. You don't matter. None of it matters.
I lay awake at night. I do philosophy, and so I'm not a nihilist, right? I'm not an existential nihilist or anything like that. However, I have been known to lay awake at night thinking that exact same thing. That and you know what makes me sad though, when I think about that fact that the Earth was no longer going to be here at one time, the sun's going to no longer be here. It's going to be dominated by just black holes and eventually heat death. And what bothers me is that we were talking earlier about Kiss and all this music and all this shit and art and literature. All that's going to be gone one day. That makes me sad. Not that I'm going to be gone. Not that even the people that I love or care about is going to be gone. It's biology. I understand, that's just a fact of life. But really kills me, though, to think that all the incredible achievements that mankind has done, including the listening to this wonderful music and books and literature and appreciation of art, all that can't be saved. All that is going to be gone one day. The universe is going to be indifferent and just won't even remember, figuratively speaking, that we were a blip on the radar in the cosmic sense. That to me is, and you talk about like the DMT and people have these experiences, these breakthroughs where they somehow are talking to these, cosmic entities, which again, I'm not quite convinced that's the case. There's different perspectives, philosophically speaking, of how the DMT trip, kind of works. One of them is basically called a contextualist, which is basically that what we experience is kind of like dependent upon our culture, right? If you have a certain culture that's going to expect to see this thing, like angels, you'll see that. You see demons, you'll see that, as opposed to maybe an existentialist point of view where these entities really do exist, right? I don't think that they actually do exist. I think it's just basically our neurological pathways have this construct that are so similar in biology that we're going to have very similar experiences because we're just biologically hardwired the same way. It's called neurotheological reductivism. And
so I agree with that, and I'll give you a little bit. I'll ease your sadness a little bit.
Please, make me happy. Make me happy.
Any of that music or art or things that you've loved, if it's gotten onto terrestrial radio or television, now not these type of broadcasts, but I'm talking about old school, broadcast radio or TV. Did you know that those broadcasts go out? They leave the Earth. And they go out infinitely into space.
Yeah,
so they are there for.
I mean,
they're pretty much there forever, and they just continue. Those waves continue to go through space.
Gravity is really the only true infinite one. But even still though, I mean, what happens when the universe just turns into like a heat death? There's no medium. There's nothing to even propagate through. It's just one big black hole, and then it all begins again or something.
And that's if there's only one universe. If there's a multiverse, then there can be other ones. But the point is, what it means to you and I, and any human being here is if you're putting too much importance on things that are just nonsense, that mean absolutely fucking nothing, and you're letting it get in the way of the enjoyment of your life. These are minutes, hours, and seconds that you're never going to get back. You're never going to get back. You cannot go back in time. You cannot live your life again. There is no pet fucking cemetery. There's no Jesus. You're not going up to heaven. There's not going to tell you how great you are. None of that's happening. You're going to let all that go. But what you do have is something that's amazing. It's against astronomical odds that you're even here and sentient.
Mm-hmm.
That is an amazing thought. And with that gift that you have, that you're here and you're sentient and you can enjoy this life, you should spend every second that you can enjoying this life. And it's taken me a long time to come to this realization, but I'm here now. And I'm really not looking for any negativity towards another human being, or definitely not an animal. I've been that way my whole life. I'm an animal lover.
Yeah,
but,
same here.
But I'm not looking for any negativity towards another human being. I can appreciate everybody's struggles. But my advice to everyone is just do whatever it is that makes you happy. Play an instrument, involve yourself in art, build yourself a ham radio, do whatever it is that you find and get enjoyment out of. Because if you don't, there's going to be a day when you're 80 years old and you're going to wish that you had, and that's one of the things when people ask me, well, why did you get into the swingers lifestyle? I've got a high sex drive. I've got a high drive for sex. It's just the way I'm wired, and the way that you can do that in an ethical way with your partner and like actually get something out of it and grow with your partner and really get close to the person that you're with is doing this. And there's going to be a day when I'm 80 years old, if I'm lucky enough to get that far, that that's not going to be a possibility for me.
Yeah,
I'm going to be
absolutely.
too old.
No, and I like the fact that you appreciate that, as because you are an atheist, as you told me before, and full-on atheist. You're like, there is no God. So people know on my channel, when I talk about atheism, I don't buy into this bullshit. Oh, I just lack a belief. No, atheism is, in philosophically context, it is the belief that God does not exist. But you appreciate the axiological value of life, and I do believe that life has value. I believe that there's an intrinsic value axiologically that people say, oh well, if you're an atheist or you're an agnostic, how do you have any value of life? Well, you do, because you make meaning for your life, and you appreciate the things even more because it's temporal. It is ephemeral. It is things that do not last forever or have any kind of permanency. Therefore, these things, being the fact they're ephemeral, to me, gives us some kind of value, and you give that to other people too, and you say, okay, do what makes you happy, blah blah blah. Although there's a caveat, as long as you don't interfere with anybody else's happiness, right?
Correct.
And I think that's important to bring out, because again, we have values to you and your spouse, to me and my daughter, to my family, to your parents, your friends. There's obligations there. There's societal contracts there that I think that everybody kind of has to uphold to have a unity. But that's what makes things valuable. This is why you have things like ethics and appreciation and aesthetics, and how you can have spiritualism and not even. I have a little spiritualism, even though I'm not religious. I don't believe in any supernatural. I don't believe in God, but spiritually, when you listen to certain things and it moves you internally, where you can just have that feeling, I find with that. I think that is a form of spiritualism, and I think that when you take these psilocybins and you take these DMTs and all this other types of mind altering stuff, you're experiencing something like that you are, becoming more aware than what your limitations are for your biological filter, because unfortunately we have to go by evolutionary processes, and so we are just biologically hardwired, period. However, I think you would agree, if we lift certain biological like a software, I guess we're changing the software, so to speak, that allows us to experience things that normally we wouldn't have, so instead of booting up on DOS 2.11, you're running Windows 11, or you're running Unix or something when you take some of this stuff, and so your mind seems to be able to doing more processes and more experiences. And again, even though I haven't tried hallucinogenics, I have been in those states where I've actually meditated. They used to call it transcendental meditation. And I've done that, where you have put yourself in a state, and you all of a sudden you're on another planet.
Right. Like, it's called a NOSC, a non-ordinary state of consciousness.
They're awesome, dude. They are so awesome. I've done it 4 times in my life that I remember. And each time was different. And each time was like, holy shit, what the fuck just happened?
And every time you take psilocybin is different. You can't, because, one time I had the most amazing time. I'm listening I'm watching fractal animation. I'm listening to Pink Floyd, and it's just all these just amazing thoughts are coming to me. And another time you try to recreate the same thing and it just doesn't happen for you the same way. It's just, you have different thoughts, you have different things. And it's almost like, if you know what the Fibonacci sequence is, one thing builds on another. Yeah. That's how it kind of works with psilocybin as well. Like each time you take it, it builds on the last time. You start to really, I've started to be able to recognize and really see and hear. Like when I hear somebody talking, I can tell somebody that's taken a good amount of psilocybin. Joe Rogan is one of them. Bill Maher is another one. People that you can tell, because these are people that refuse to engage in magical thinking. That's the other thing that psilocybin does for you. It removes any magical thinking from your head at all. Negative or positive magical thinking gets removed. I'll tell you like a story about my wife. Like I had to for years try to convince her, and a lot of women are this way. Like they are really down on themselves and really view themselves in a negative way because of society. There's a whole lot of reasons for it. And one night in Jersey City, we were taking psilocybin, and she walks into the bathroom and walks out, and she's like, I really look like this. Like she had been seeing herself in a way because of society, the neighborhood she grew up in, all this kind of stuff, in a way that wasn't the way that all the rest of us were seeing her. Mm-hmm. And psilocybin, what it does is it removes that lens. It removes your ego and it removes your personal negativity bias. You talk about that hardwire evolution. We have a hardwired evolutionary negativity bias that's in us. So that's why some people when they get angry or sad or whatever, and they get caught into that negativity cycle, they're getting a dopamine spike from that. From that negativity, they get that dopamine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's without fail.
And we have this negativity bias that's in us, and psilocybin removes that bias, and it also removes your magical thinking bias, and you get to see and feel and think about things as they are, and you really focus down on what is important, and then your mind opens up to these thoughts that you were like, oh, it's there are things too that you think, wow. Like this has been sitting right in front of me like an elephant in the room, and I haven't been able to see it because I've had this crazy lens. And for me, one of them was, like I couldn't figure out for a long time. I was like, wow, like it's just like I'm, deep down, I really do try to be a nice person and a good person to the people that know me. And I couldn't realize and figure out, I'm like, I'm just doing an entertainment show. Rocky's not the heavyweight champion of the world. Like Hulk Hogan has never wrestled anybody in his entire life. None of that is real. And yet all these people are very angry with me. And I just realized I'm putting out anger into the world. So anger is what I'm getting back. And that's one of the things that psilocybin has really brought to the forefront for me, which is like, look, man, if you want to live a positive life, if you want to do all these things that you want to do, if you want to enjoy all this stuff, that you yourself have to change your vibration. You yourself have to put out positivity into the world, and that's what you will get back. And since I have been doing that, my world has changed immensely and for the better. It's anybody that's toxic is out of my life. And
Amen. Amen.
And I was, fortunate enough to be friends with a guy named Deion Sanders, and people know his public persona in sports, which is not who he is off the air. He's doing a character on the air. Off the air, he is one of the sweetest, nicest guys on the planet. And he said something to Bubba and myself one time, which has just stuck with me in my head. And now I really understand what he was saying, which is people in your life are either adding and multiplying or they're dividing and subtracting. And if they're dividing and subtracting, they got to go.
Yeah.
So
I
that is it. And it's with peace and love, but you've got to get out of my life if you're a toxic person.
Yeah, my circle
I don't have time for it.
My circle has been diminished multiple times over. I have a thing called what I call culling and cultivating.
Yes.
And I've culled, people that unfortunately have had toxicity that I do not have around, cannot have around, will not have around. And then I've collected and cultivated people that, have the same kind of mindset. This show, has been ups and downs, and my stay on YouTube has had ups and downs. Although I still have a very strong base, my name is recognized, but I've had to unfortunately deal with very toxic people. It's part of the things that you just deal with when you put yourself out there. Now, I am not a public figure. I am in the public. You are a public figure. There's a difference to be had there, not just legally speaking, but just when you put your life out there and you say, hey, look, evaluate, judge me, whatever, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, I respect that immensely. I don't want to be a public figure. I have no desire to reach those heights. I don't care. I like what I do just on the level that I'm at, but I have such a strong base that I have had for many, many years that appreciate that, right? But let me ask you, when it comes to the psilocybin thing, kind of think of it this way. We talked about the hardwire of the mind and all this stuff. There's something called direct realism, which is the when you look at an object, right? Like, for example, I have a cup here, right? Now, this cup I have a green screen. You can tell I have a green screen.
Yeah,
this cup happens to be green, right? And so your mind's processing it, but it's not seeing the cup for what it is. It's not, the noumenon, I guess Kant would say, right? You're not seeing it for what it is, because this is actually a green cup. Your mind's not processing it that same way because, of course, you're not visually seeing it. But I've noticed when I'm in an altered state, and again, not necessarily the psilocybins or anything like that, because I haven't tried it yet, but I notice when I'm in an altered state, I do see reality a little bit different. The hardwiring that has come with years of evolution somehow changed a little bit, and that, to me, I love exploring that, because when I've done these altered states and you go to a different place, and I mean literally your mind goes to a different place. It's hard to describe for anybody who's never had like a lucid dream, but when you are in that state of consciousness where you're like looking around and you're like, holy shit, this is really cool. I'm like, you physically feel it. You can feel the wind in your hair. It is tactile. I mean, I remember one day laying in bed and I just lifted my arms up and they were translucent. I can see right through them. They were laying down, right? And again, I'm in altered state. I don't think that I left my body, right? I don't believe, a soul or anything like that. But I was looking at my hands and I was just like, and all of a sudden I was like touching them and I could feel a tactile sensation. I remember this so distinctly in this state that I thought to myself, my mind is feeling something even though there's nothing there to be felt. This is all the mental states doing this, and this is part of the problem of hard consciousness and the problem of the mind-body connection. How does the mental cause a physical? How does the physical cause a mental? Something we don't quite understand. But I think these drugs allow the mind to experience certain things to give us a little more insight to reality as it actually is, rather than how we perceive it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And there is that mind-body connection. There's a great book by a guy named Gabor Mate called When the Body Says No, where he talks about and proves that just stressing yourself out will manifest itself as a physical ailment if it goes on long enough.
Absolutely. Of course it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know that stress can cause physiological changes. We know that mental states can cause physiological changes.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, I think there's a direct connection between the mind and the mental. Now I tend to what's called property dualism. I'm not a substance dualism. I don't think the mind and the physical are two different substances. I think there's either one substance, which is called a monistic neutral monism. It's one substance, and then you have these two properties come out of it, which is almost like an emergence, right? So you have a physical substrate of the mind, and out of that emergence, we have mental processes. But it doesn't have any real ontology, right? Dreams and thoughts, even though we talk about it having some kind of existence. Because if I say, look, I have a dream last night, there's an implicature there that you had something to have dreamed about, right? There's an existence of some sort. When you say I dreamed about something, there's a dream to be had, even though that dream has no substance to it, right? It's a conceptual in nature. It's phenomenological. But we still talk about these things as if they are a real entity. Matter of fact, I just read a paper on Stanford Encyclopedia on non-entities. I don't know if you ever looked into non-entities, but it's a fascinating thing on non-entities. And if God doesn't exist, it doesn't even make sense to talk about God if God doesn't exist, because when you're talking about something that doesn't exist, you have to assume it does exist to show that it doesn't exist, according to modern theories. And it's just hard to wrap your head around some of this philosophical stuff, right? And I think that these drugs tell the mind, hey, maybe try apprehending it this way. Maybe try looking at it this way, completely out of the box. Sometimes, so far out of the box, you're not even, in the same building that it's boxed in. Yeah.
It absolutely does that. It removes a lot of the filters that society puts there. And whether it's filters that were put there, like, when you're forming your personality between 1 and 5, or whether it's filters that, things like I explain to people all the time when they talk to me about politics, because I'm not even on the right or the left. It doesn't, none of that. The red team versus blue team is completely uninteresting to me. But what I do explain to them, whether it's MSNBC or Fox News, what they're doing is they're doing things, they're repeating things in a way, in such a cadence to where it's going to imprint on your subconscious if you watch that all day long.
Oh yeah, we've seen that happen. We've seen news organizations do that,
yes,
literally.
Yes, absolutely.
Fox did that for a while.
Yeah, but they do it, and they're doing it for profit, because they know that the more that they can enrage you, the more time that you spend watching. And they found that there's a book by a guy named Johann Hari. He wrote an unassailable book about the war on drugs called Chasing the Scream that I can't recommend enough. Now, my wife read his most current book, which is called Stolen Focus. But in Stolen Focus, what he does is he talks about how the social media companies, especially like Facebook, have figured out, and the algorithm has figured out. Remember, these algorithms and AI have no emotions. No, they don't look at you as a human. What makes you stay on the screen the longest is negative shit.
Yep. No,
I
completely agree with that.
To the screen longer.
I completely agree that Facebook has dominated on that. And matter of fact, I think it's so bullshit on Facebook, because Facebook's algorithm, they say they want to prevent bullying and harassment on this other shit. And their algorithm is bullshit. Their algorithm sucks. It can't determine, context or anything like that. I even got timed out one time for like a couple of days because I said humans are apes, or humans are monkeys, or something like that, which is biologically true, monophyletically speaking. But it's, but it's
98.6% the same as chimps.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yes, we have, it's not just we share common lineage, but we actually come from Catarrhines, which are the old world monkeys. So we are a super family of Homodia and hominids that come from monkeys. So technically speaking, because we're a nested hierarchy, we are apes, we are monkeys. We're actually monophyletically fish. If you read, there's a great book called Your Inner Fish. By Neil Shubin, which makes a case. Well, yes, technically we came from fish monophyletically, but yeah,
as the toady said, I come from the water.
Yeah, exactly. And so Facebook has recognized though that even though they say they give lip service and they don't want the shit, it's their bread and butter negativity.
That's what they need. Without negativity, Facebook becomes not nearly as profitable. And by the way, in this book, Stolen Focus by Johann Hari, who's a fantastic author and a great researcher. So any of his books that you decide to read are amazing. Chasing the Scream, again, I can't recommend enough. But in Stolen Focus, they brought this data to Mark Zuckerberg. And when they brought it to Zuckerberg, they said, they showed him this. And he was like, yeah, don't ever bring me anything like that ever again. Because they told him, like, negativity is what keeps people glued to the screen. He's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Don't bring me that ever again. Keep people glued to the screen. That's your job.
Zuckerberg is an AI anyways. I think he's been sent here from the future.
And that's the other thing that really, something that really freaks me out. And I'm hoping that I'm gone by this time is once the singularity does really happen, like, Stephen Hawking said that we don't even know what AI is going to do once it reaches the singularity and gets past that point. It is a completely unpredictable thing. Like, Facebook did an experiment a couple of years ago where they had two AI talk to each other, and within 1 minute, the AI had made up a language that the humans couldn't understand. That they were talking.
And it probably was to eliminate the humans. That seems to be like you're obviously familiar with Isaac Asimov's, I Robot series.
Of course.
And I Foundation series. Oh, brilliant series. But yeah, and I think that there's something to be said by that. I think that these are natural progressions when it comes to AI. However, I personally, and this is just my opinion because I know fuck all about AI. But just for me as philosophy, I'm still not convinced that you can have a purely AI system that is able to actually reach consciousness. And I don't know if you ever heard something called Searle's Chinese Room. Have you heard of that in philosophy?
I haven't heard. I've not heard of that one.
The Searle's Chinese Room, in kind of a nutshell, is basically saying, look, if you were this automaton person in a closed room where somebody was sending you messages and they just send you a message that's in Chinese. You don't speak Chinese, but you have these rules that you go by that says, okay, if it's this symbol, you do this and this and this, and then you just put it out the other end. And so you just go, okay, follow the rules and do it. No matter how many times you do this, you'll never be able to learn the language. Because you're not learning anything. You're just following a set of scripted rules. And so I don't know without some kind of biological substrate if you can ever have true consciousness in just an AI system that is strictly mechanistic as far as physical and not biological. Now, if you start incorporating like, biological things on chips, which they can do, they can incorporate, neurons and things in that in biological integration, then we're talking about something more of a cyborg stuff. Then yeah, that I believe. But just to have a 100% silicon-based intelligence, I'm not quite convinced yet. I've talked to experts on that, and they're like, "Yeah, well, we don't know, but we think that's possible."
What you say. That's what Stephen Hawking said, that we don't know, but if it does, it's completely unpredictable. I think
it's inevitable though that they probably realize that we are probably dangerous and probably will come after us like Skynet.
So there's the scariest documentary I've ever watched is called "In the Age of AI," and it's on it was a PBS Frontline documentary, 2-hour documentary. And they go to China, and China has 17 companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies that are just AI. And when you watch that, it gives you more of a clear picture of what's going on with AI than just in the United States. Like we're just a fraction ahead of China, and China's about to come even with us and go past us in this AI technology, which I'm not that excited about, to be really honest.
What's that graph? And I don't remember the name of it. Maybe my audience might know it if you don't. But remember that there's a graph that shows basically the amount of relationship between the similitude between an actual facial features and the uncomfortableness that we have watching something like an automatron going, okay, this is too creepy. This is almost inhuman. It's so lifelike. There's that graph that shows, okay, if it's just like a funny face like that, like a Pokemon kind of, remember those tetragrammatrons, what they're called, what do they call it, those little egg things where you have a little computer thing you had to keep alive. You look at that and you're like, oh, okay, no big deal. But all of a sudden, as it gets more lifelike, there's this creepy factor that factors in.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the facial things that they have now, with the automatrons, you're like, holy shit, man, that's real. That's gonna come alive any second. It freaks you the fuck out, even though it's completely automated. It has no intelligence whatsoever, but it's gotten damn close. And I think that one day it's gonna be very hard to determine, AI from just a computer, because it's so either it's going to be emulated so well that can actually pass the Turing test, or it will become self-aware.
And that's what's concerning for me, because it's so unpredictable. Like you could talk to 100 experts, they'll give you 100 different answers, and nobody really actually knows.
Nobody knows, of course, again, because they're dealing with unknowns. We still can't figure out the mind-body problem. There's obviously many theories. There's so many theories. I tend to what's called non-reductive physicalism, but I mean, nobody knows. These are just philosophies. So like, okay, pick one and go with it. They have not determined any of this. So once they did, in fact, I think if they could solve the hard problem of P equals NP, and they could calculate whether we could do things in exponential time versus linear, a lot of these more hard NP problems probably will be integrated into AI, and then maybe there'll be just like exponential growth in AI as far as like it's becoming self-aware. But as you've noted, then this shit gets real and dangerous, because if you have two things that are talking to each other, that develop their own language and their own communication and own political structure and sociological structures and everything else that, as a new species per se, we become obsolete.
Yes. And people, when I worked at Sirius XM, used to, because it was kind of a joke when I would talk about this AI stuff and how it kind of freaked me out. And I was like, yeah, it's all funny until it's not, until a robot police officer jumps over a building and arrests you and puts you in jail.
Coming to town near you. Yeah, exactly.
Like it's all funny until you have an army of robots that the Chinese are controlling, and now they're not even sacrificing people; they're sacrificing machines to attack you.
Well, what do you think about that as far as a robot army? Like, I mean,
I think it's completely unethical. I think it's completely unethical to put robots out there as killing machines in a military sense. I think
it has issues. There's no question about that. Here's the thing when it comes to war, ethics is so. I'm against war crimes, right? I think anybody who has any sense of morality is against war crimes. I'm not for torture. I'm not for chemical weapons. I'm not for nuclear weapons. But war is war. You're a fighter. You're a Marine. So you understand that war is hell. War sucks. Even though that we've done some pretty shitty shit, even with in Vietnam with Agent Orange and other things. I mean, we've tried to win wars, but done so by very questionable means. I don't think our government is the saint by any stretch of imagination. But at the same token, when you have certain types of regimes, like in World War II, when it came to the Axis, they were dangerous. I mean, at what level do you say, look, we want to remain ethical and not have war crimes, but we're going to drop a bomb on Hiroshima. Oh, 3 days later, we're going to drop a bomb on Nagasaki. These things I thought were ethical. I think that we had to do that, even though now we look at nuclear war going, no, we can't do stuff like that. So I think it's problematic when we start going, okay, with these machines, does it save human lives? I don't know.
We don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. We have no idea. And these machines have no emotion.
Right.
They have no caring. There's no empathy. And then when you get into those areas of making life and death decisions, I think you're really into some questionable area there. Like I'm not a huge fan of pilots sitting in the United States and flying drones in the Middle East and droning people.
It's hard to wrap your head around that. Yeah, I get it. I really do. But when you don't look the enemy in the face, it's a whole different mindset. Matter of fact, do you remember Star Trek episode where it would all be calculated? A computer did all of it, and they said, okay, you've suffered 1,000 calories, casualties, and so they just walk these people into these death things. Remember that? Yeah. Like, oh, but it's humane. We're not dropping nuclear weapons. We're not having radiation. We're not destroying the planet. It's just a computer. Computer's doing it. Hey, 100 people, they're dead.
You lost these people, and it goes back to the old Archie Bunker joke. Would it make it? They're talking to him about gun control, and he turns to Meathead and Gloria, and he said, "Would it make you feel any better if they were pushed out of windows? Like, how you die? Like, does it really matter? You're dead. Like, these people are still dead.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Personally, does it matter? Like." And when you talk about World War II, like World War II never happens if you go back, if there's no World War One. And World War One was the most senseless, non-monarchical nonsense ever. And all these monarchs were related. I didn't even realize this. And so I didn't know much about World War One. I'd studied World War II extensively, Indochina and Vietnam extensively. So in the last few years, I started looking at World War One. And when you start looking at World War One, I didn't even realize this. Like the ruling family of Austria and Germany and England and Russia, all these people were related.
Same lineage,
The Tsar of Russia and King Edward looked like twin fucking brothers. They're cousins. Like, I was like, whoa, hold on. This is all the same family, yes. And World War One was this thing where we need this glory. They had this idea of glory in the past, and these wars with sabers and things like that, and they didn't understand. Like, now there's mustard gas and machine guns and mass death and these weapons of mass destruction. And because of World War One, and you get to the Treaty of Versailles, that creates an opportunity for a guy like Hitler. And had it not been Hitler, it would have been somebody else. Germany was in those types of straits. There would have been some other type of radical maniac.
We had Mussolini in Italy.
And Mussolini, and Mussolini is who, like, most modern dictators are modeled after. Like, you can see Putin does what Mussolini did. He like takes his shirt off and takes pictures. Like, but it comes back to my point that I made all at the beginning, which is, no matter how right or wrong that you are, when you start committing acts of violence, whether it's murder, duty, or fun, killing is killing. Yeah. Violence is violence, and it comes back to you. And I recently did a show on the history of the French Revolution, and as righteous as the revolutionaries were, and as important as that event was in the Age of Enlightenment and getting religion out of Western society, as important as that was for Robespierre and Marat, they met the same exact fate that Louis and Marie met, because that's what they were doing to other people.
The people killed them? The people went after him?
Yeah. Well, Robespierre got guillotined, and Marat. Yeah. And Marat got killed in his tub.
Marie Antoinette got guillotined, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Marie Antoinette, and the king got guillotined, but so did Robespierre, and so did Marat. So everybody involved in violence and bringing violence upon France, it came back to them personally. So you personally, even if you're right, even if you're righteous, violence and negativity is going to come back to you.
Well, let me ask you on that before we kind of like wrap it up. Guy, I don't want to keep it for like 90 minutes. Putin, do you think that that he will probably end up with a similar fate? I know his people are not happy with him. I stand by Ukraine. I think that Russia has committed war crimes. I mean, they've always been the aggressor. You and I lived through the Cold War. We've been there, done that. Okay. We know what Russia's capable of, and even though that Putin is not a hardliner, he's not a hard communist. He's actually was not a fan of hard communism. He is an aggressor. He's an authoritarian. He's an expansionist. He's an imperialist. What he's doing is completely immoral.
I think of it more like a crime boss.
Okay, and that's fine. And that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some organized, shit there.
There's an organized crime boss that he works for. A guy named Semyon Mogilevich is his name, and the guy goes by he goes by the name the boss of bosses. So the Russian mafia is who's running Russia right now.
You think they're kind of putting his strings?
You ever ask anyone? Well, I think Putin is now he's become a megalomaniac. But he was the vice mayor of St. Petersburg, Russia. And then all of a sudden, he's the guy that replaces Boris Yeltsin. And the reason he got there was because of Semyon Mogilevich, who's the boss. Put him in that place. Mm-hmm. And that's why he has this band of oligarchs. They all work for Semyon Mogilevich. But I think what's happened here is power corrupts anyone. Kind of J.R.R. Tolkien's point in Lord of the Rings. Nobody can handle it. Mm-hmm. I think that being that rich and that in charge of such a large country for such a long time, Putin is a megalomaniac. I think that he is going to do anything to save face. I think this is an extremely dangerous situation because of his pathology,
his ego.
Mm-hmm. His ego and his malignant narcissism. But he got there because of organized crime. So I kind of think of Russia more like a organized crime organization. Notice anybody that goes against Putin gets whacked. like that you would do in the mob.
Oh yeah, they've assassinated people. I mean, they actually use polonium
polonium. Right, they use polonium to let you know who it was.
Exactly. It's a signature. It is a signature thing. It's no bullshit. It is a polonium will fuck you up. I mean, it doesn't take very much. You will die of radiation.
And that's to let you know. That's to let you know you crossed the boss. So this is what you got. It's like when the Sicilians give you the sleeps with the fishes, or the Colombians give you a Colombian necktie.
Exactly.
It's all a signature to make sure that like, hey, we're organized crime and you fucked with the boss. And that's how you kind of got to think of Russia. It's not even really organized as a government. But they're like, there's a war in Ukraine and there's not even a field commander down there. Yeah, because he's operating this like the mafia, not like a country.
That's a good point. They really don't have any military presence per se as far as a chain of command. They have very, very antiquated supplies. They don't have any real way to replenish anything. They have no real chain of command. They have no real military people out there that are, and I'm sure his military people aren't going to tell him what's up. They probably know he fucked up. But he's not the kind of guy to go, hey, by the way, this was a bad move. You say things like, Kim Jong. You don't tell him that you did something wrong. That he did something wrong. You just don't do those things. Trump was the same way though. It's so funny. Trump, those people couldn't tell him.
Same pathology.
Same pathology.
Same exact pathology. Malignant narcissism.
He just surrounded himself by yes men because he thought that if people said no to him, it was they were attacking him personally. They were being disloyal. No, they were telling him shit that he needed to hear that he either didn't understand, or he was too malignant of a narcissist to recognize that, hey, this needs to change. But he thought he knew everything and he could do everything.
That's number two. Mm-hmm. That's number two. Because think a guy, people that think like you and I. Well, first of all, I don't want to be anywhere near being president. So, but if I was, let's say, but if I was, let's say you lose an election. Like, I am counting, like I'm in my head counting the days till I can get the fuck out of here and go give speeches for $2 million for 20 minutes. But his malignant narcissism wouldn't even allow that thought, to the point where he had to get people ginned up for January 6th because he couldn't allow the thought that he lost an election.
Absolutely.
Never mind the fact that the money is going to be like a spigot after you leave being an ex-president.
But it wasn't about money with him. It's ego. Money is just a means to an end with these people.
Right. It's his pathology. Right. It's the malignant narcissism that's not going to allow the world to say, hey, I lost. He can notice that the man has, when you notice this with malignant narcissists, and I've been around a couple of them, They can never apologize.
Nope.
That's number one.
Nope. They don't think they did anything wrong.
They will never say the words "I was wrong," ever, and they can never, ever have themselves viewed as a quote unquote loser or I lost. Which all of us, like, you take losses and that's how you grow.
Sure.
That's how you become. That's what makes you grow more, is the losses and the defeats make you get stronger more than the wins do. But that pathology doesn't even allow that. And he is in public life, one of the worst I've ever seen. I mean, he is one of the worst. And I'm just talking about the psychology of it, not even the politics of it. Just the psychology of it is one of the worst I've ever seen.
Well, Trump was raised that way. He got participation awards. He was told he was the best in everything. And I think, and of course, he ended up believing that shit, right? Trump. And again, I'm not political that much. I did a show called Over and Under with a friend of mine. He was from Australia. We did talk a little about politics, but it's just something that I don't dive into too much. I mean, it's just like anybody else. It's something that we talk about. Yeah, but it's something I dive into too much. But when it came to like Trump, it was fascinating because Trump was told all his life that he was so great, even though he wasn't even mediocre. He was substandard in almost every aspect of everything. He sucks at business. He sucks at writing, reading comprehension, abstract thought. He's not a smart person, but he's been told he's fucking brilliant by, insiders and friends and family because his fragile ego wouldn't allow anything else.
Right. And I have a hypothesis, and there's no studies been done on this, and this is just me anecdotally looking at the world. So this is all of it that it is. But whatever family you take, a Trump family, the Bush family, the Kennedys, whoever it is, I think that there is and I'm not talking about a little bit of money passed down. I'm talking about big time old money. With every generation, I think there's an inverse relationship between intelligence and passed down super wealth, because I think when all of us have to use our brains to figure out, how am I going to pay the rent this month? How am I going to, think about when you're first starting out in the world, how much, the first time you've got to pay rent, the first time you've got to pay all your bills.
Oh yeah.
All on your own.
I had a bankruptcy. I had to learn the hard way back in the early, way many years ago. I had to learn these things. I got an 800 credit score now though.
But you haven't, but that's all things that you had to learn and work through, and your mind had to work through. When you've never had to use that part of your brain, it atrophies. And when you look at, there was a case down here in the county where I live, Terry Schiavo. It was a big political case, and this woman was in a coma for 10 years.
They're gonna pull the plug on.
And Sean Hannity's on the air saying she's talking in there, and they're feeding her milkshakes. Well, I was like, I wanted, nobody would bet me. I was like, let's make a bet when her autopsy comes back, because when your brain atrophies, it's just like any other muscle. If you don't use it, it becomes liquid. So her brain, when they did the autopsy, the only thing that was functioning was the brainstem. Everything else was completely liquid. It was completely liquid. Everybody that said otherwise was lying. It was
just automatic functions. Basically, at that point, all you have is just heartbeat. That's it.
And it's a story that us here in the Tampa Bay area, well, we had been following this story for 10 years, and we knew what a good guy. This woman had been in this vegetative state for 10 years, a decade, not one bed sore. And the guy, her husband had gotten, he had a new relationship, he had a new girlfriend, but he never ever let her suffer for a second, even though she didn't even know.
Right. But it's still the humane thing to do at that point.
But he did the most humane thing. And then you have these people come from out of state about the time where the case comes to a conclusion, where the judge says, yes, you can take her off life support. Right. She's obviously not going to come back. So you have the media comes here from out of state, and they're reporting this shit that's completely not true.
And that's so unethical. And look, I'm for euthanasia. I believe quality of life. And this is another thing that libertarians stand for. Again, I've always been more of a centrist. I was kind of more of a Reagan Republican. But the modern Republicans, not the same party. They're not the same party. Not
even close. Ronald Reagan used to say, if we agree 80%, then we agree. That's why he got, I think he won 49 states when he got reelected.
He had overwhelming popularity.
Because he was inclusive. That's how he won.
I remember patriotism was quite high, and I don't mean like nationalism. I mean like actual just people being proud of being an American, and I mean that's a healthy amount of patriotism. Fucking under Trump, I'm sorry, it was just the antithesis of that.
If you don't agree with me, then I hate you is not patriotism. That's I mean, none of us served for that. You know, I tell when people tell me they support Trump or they support Biden or they're a Democrat or a Republican, I tell them that's great.
Sure,
you know what? I served in the military, so you have the right to vote for whoever you want to vote for.
I 100% agree with that. Look, if people want to vote for Trump and stuff like that, I like to know the reasoning. I do. I'm fascinated by their mindset.
Oh, I talk to them all the time, but I don't try to tell them you're an asshole or you're wrong.
No,
because
I don't get personal with that kind of shit.
And everybody comes from a different place, and everybody has different struggles and different reasons that they vote the way that they vote. And I like our differences, and I like having discussions with people that I might not agree with, and I don't have to get personal about it. But it's the thing that everybody just bear in mind. No politician here, this is from George Carlin. No politician cares about you. They fucking don't. They never will. They don't care about you, and don't be under that illusion. And that's one of those psilocybin magical thinking things that comes out of your head. You're like, oh yeah, none of these crooks up here in suits in Washington care about you.
Yeah, they're supposed to represent their constituency.
They don't.
And they don't. There's no possible
They
way
represent lobbyists.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly. Because lobbyists are where the money's at.
Yep. It's all about money.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I definitely.
Well, Steve, it's been great talking to you today.
I appreciate this immensely.
And we'll do it again for sure.
Yeah, no, like I said, I told you earlier to stick around for a second in the Skype call.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to tell you though, this was fascinating to me. I love guests that can talk about just about anything because we go from topic to topic on the Non-Sequitur Show. Usually, we'll do like a very specific thing, and we'll have a debate or have a PhD come in. But these free forums, I don't get to do very often, and they are my favorite form to do because you never know where they're going to go. So
me too. I love it.
Thank you, man. I want to thank my audience. Please leave me a message in the comment section. Please let me know what you think of the video. Like, subscribe, do all the YouTube shit, okay? With that, guys, we'll see you later. Good night.